Well, it wasn't too bad. The bad part was that I ate chili for dinner, and so I had to taste that. And
congratulations.
Yeah, and it was the greatest things that ever happened to me. Welcome to this episode of Running Out the Clock. A little bit later in the week than we normally release episodes. We're just having to deal with some scheduling conflicts. The conflicts being that we do a podcast for free in our free time, and sometimes we just got more important things to do. Let's just be honest here.
Real life happens.
I mean, that's kind of it. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. We've got Keith Big Boss Harkins here tonight. It's just the two of us.
Just the two of us.
We can make it with
just the two of us.
That's right. I'm Grover Washington Jr., and that over there is Bill Withers. Welcome to this episode of Running Out the Clock. Week 7 in the books, one that featured some actual, impressive results, some actual, talking points, maybe for the first time this whole season. I feel like this has been, and we've talked about it quite a bit, but this has kind of been a bit of a boring SEC football season for the most part. Most teams not doing that great. But we had some interesting score lines this past weekend, not the least of which being victories for South Carolina and for Tennessee when they were not expected to do it. And that's going to be some of the major stuff that we talk about. However, first, we must start this episode off the way that we always do. Keith, what do we always do?
Talking about the Noles.
That's right. We're talking about the Noles now. Florida State. I mean, I haven't even checked the score. I assume it wasn't good for Florida State because otherwise we probably would have much bigger headlines than South Carolina upsetting Georgia to talk about. Yes, I'm seeing it here. They lost to Clemson. 45-14. So, as expected, a return to normalcy for the Florida State Seminoles. You got any thoughts on this one?
I mean, it's pretty much what everyone expected, right? Florida State's okay. Clemson is really good, and that's how the score ended up.
There were people that were trying to create a maybe Clemson is not that great narrative after their 1-point victory over North Carolina. So many people that Clemson dropped to number 3 in the polls by now from being the number 1 team in the country. I don't understand that. And part of why I don't understand that is because it's that classic Clemson almost got beat. Now, I mean, I guess I do understand, okay, they're the only team that's really played a, really close game, and especially against an unranked opponent. But it's that classic, not giving enough credit to UNC type of thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've seen that UNC is actually not bad this year. So
exactly.
Clemson always has that one game where they inexplicably struggle against a quote unquote lesser. It happens every year. The last 3 or 4 or 5 years. And guess what? Everything's okay because they're still really good.
Yeah, I mean, UNC's 3 losses have been field goal. Oh, no, they actually beat Miami. Sorry, I read that score backwards for a moment there. Their losses have been to ranked Appalachian State by field goal. Field goal loss to a ranked Appalachian State. 1-point loss to a ranked Clemson team. Man, I thought I saw that their record was 2-3. What am I overlooking? Where's their other loss? Oh, Wake Forest beat them. There it is. Goodness.
A ranked Wake Forest team also. Which is weird. The ACC is weird, folks.
So weird. Their biggest loss is to an unranked Wake Forest team. What in the world? But UNC just beat Georgia Tech. They've beaten South Carolina. They've beaten Georgia Tech. They've beaten Miami. Why is that score not showing up in their overall? I don't understand. I don't know. This must have been.
It's the deep state ACC, man.
Apparently,
records.
Yeah. Apparently, for some reason, the search results I pulled up gave me the final score of Clemson versus North Carolina, but did not have the updated records. So it still had Clemson as 5-0 and North Carolina as 2-3, even though both teams won this weekend. So I don't know. It was weird. So that being said, another thing we always try to do at the beginning of episodes is we try to give a little bit of credit where credit is due, and maybe not necessarily given as much as it should. Right off the top of my head, though, there's only one person I feel like I want to give credit to coming out of this past weekend, and he's getting a lot of credit, and I think he totally deserves it. But that's Lynn Bowden Jr. of Kentucky, who stepped in. He's been Kentucky's best player by far so far this season. Like, that's just no question. You know, quarterback Terry Wilson, of course, got hurt a while back, and that has really gotten in the way, slowed things down a bit for Kentucky. But they had a lot of other issues going on at the quarterbacking position, so they just said, you know what, whatever. Let's just put the ball in the hands of our best offensive player at all times. And so wide receiver Bowden comes in as quarterback, 7 of 11 passing for 78 yards and a touchdown, and almost 200 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he had what the kids call a good game.
Yep. I don't remember if I said this on the podcast or in the group text or what it was, but I mean, it's easy to make the Randall Cobb comparisons with Lynn Bowden.
Yep.
Just easy to do it. And he's showing it right now. So just a playmaker. I like it when a team just says, you know what, screw conventional logic. Let's put the ball in the hands of the best player and just go with it.
Yeah. And I mean, good for him. Although it is infuriating to see Sawyer struggle immediately after the Florida game for like the whole year.
Right.
After looking like he was just going to be like the next big thing. So, but we'll take the win.
Well, I mean, you said it. The losses that Kentucky has suffered have broken them by now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not just the Florida, the heartbreaking Florida loss where they poured everything into it, but then to the next week have a second conference loss to Mississippi State, who, as it turns out, is, we said mediocre at best team. They're like mediocre at best now,
right.
Improving it. And then to just get, walloped by South Carolina, who, just put together the game of their lives. But like, it really, like, Kentucky broke for a few weeks in there. So they had to do something. They had to. And Lynn Bowden was the answer there. So I just feel like there's no one else that I wanted to, because he might have just saved their season by doing what he did against Arkansas and getting a victory where they badly needed a conference victory. Yeah,
kind of gets them back on track after those 3 straight losses. 2 of which were basically soul crushing. So good for him. Good for them.
I'm not sure if you had any other nominees for this category or not.
I mean, kind of along the same lines. Kelly Bryant, kind of has that scary looking injury last week.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of questions about, like, it's never a really great and confidence inspiring look when your starter comes out of the tunnel on crutches.
Right.
But of course, turns out he just kind of hyperextended it and is good to go, and comes out and has a very Kelly Bryant game. What's really interesting about Missouri and Kelly Bryant is, like, when you look at their stat lines, he's always like over 300 yards passing with like 1 or 2 touchdowns. Just real solid. And so he comes out against an Ole Miss team that was feeling pretty good after their win against Vandy last week, and plays a really solid game. So good for him.
Yeah, definitely kind of answering some of the questions about whether or not he could be trusted in an offense that moves the ball through the air a lot more, since Clemson was dead set on using him as a scrambler. He goes to that Missouri offense. I assume Derek Dooley is still the offensive coordinator there, if I remember correctly. And Dooley had been, he's offense coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and he'd been doing an amazing job in his tenure at Missouri as OC and quarterbacks coach. You see it with like Drew Lock and everything. So it was, a lot of questions of whether or not that's going to be the right fit for Kelly Bryant, and he's doing well. I mean, you nailed it. Every game, it's like he's got about 300 yards passing. He's got great receivers out there. Yeah, helps out.
Yeah, they've got to be one of the more pleasant surprises in the SEC this year. I think Chandler and I did their preview, and we're kind of talking about how, like, if things go well, they could very easily go into like this stretch of SEC games against, Ole Miss, Vandy, Kentucky, Georgia, 5 or 6-0.
Yep. And that was you and I, by the way, doing that.
I was okay.
But I mean, Chandler and I look alike. So
you're both tall with beards, and
that's it.
And we're friends. So
we're just tall bearded white guys. All tall bearded white guys look the same.
Look the exact same. The only real interesting thing was their one stumble was against a team that I don't think anybody expected them to stumble against.
No, it made no sense.
So they got that hiccup out of the way and just cruised to a bunch of wins. Like, Ole Miss was probably their toughest win of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, for sure. And I'm looking at that game a little bit closer here. I think a lot of Ole Miss fans were probably a bit frustrated at the Matt Corral, John Reese Plumlee situation. I know I had one Facebook friend who is an Ole Miss guy, and guy I went to college with, who posted a screenshot of the stats, and it was Corral 133 yards, Plumlee 103 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, and he was like, yes, now I see why we have the 2 quarterback system.
Right, with one of those two having a very clear advantage in one of the stat lines.
Yeah, at some point in time, and this is one of those things I feel like Chandler said a lot about, so I won't harp on it much, but at some point in time, like, you have to go with consistency. You just kind of have to go with something consistent. You can't really do the 2 quarterback system at this point. Mississippi State was experiencing the same thing, playing Tommy Stevens instead of Garrett Schrader this past weekend. At some point, you really just need to go. Even if you think the other guy maybe is better, you have to go with consistency. And I think that might be what the Rebels and Bulldogs are facing. We'll talk more about the Bulldogs in a little bit, though. So I don't want to jump the gun on that conversation.
Can't get there too early, man.
Can't get there too early. But while we're talking about Missouri, let's harp on Missouri a little bit more. This was something we were going to talk about, and then I left off the show outline, but I'm putting back on the outline right now. Let's talk about Missouri. Missouri has become an incredibly intriguing team. Well, I guess going into the season, honestly, they were an incredibly intriguing team because they seem to have so many tools returning from last season. I mean, you had the running back duo, Larry Roundtree and Tyler Beatty. Roundtree had a great game against Ole Miss, 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. You had the big tight end, Albert Okwuegbunam, who was returning, who was at one of the – last year was like the year of the tight ends in the SEC.
Right.
And he was just one of the many headliners, it seemed like. They just returned so much talent, and then they added Kelly Bryant, with a winning pedigree and everything. And, it was like, depending on how the NCAA comes down on them, and depending on how the appeal goes, they could either have everything to play for or nothing to play for this season. And we're reaching a point in which the talk in Missouri right now revolves heavily on the fact that the feeling is the appeal response will come in the next couple of weeks, probably for sure by the end of the month. That's the general feeling that the Missouri Tigers have. Chandler pointed out when we texted about it earlier, but the Ole Miss announcement came on November 1st, so it might just be about the time of the year in which the NCAA tries to wrap up appeal stuff. But that's the situation Missouri finds themselves in right now. They're 2-0 in conference play, 5-1 overall, looking good. maybe a bit of a porous defense, but such a good offense they can cover up the mistakes a bit here. Looking like a team that with a Georgia stumble and with a probably still beatable Florida team could be top of the East if they play their cards right.
Yeah, also,
but it still could also count for nothing.
Yeah, they're somehow, perhaps miraculously, their two West opponents are Ole Miss and Arkansas.
Yeah,
like they hit the weak team jackpot.
Yeah,
and it couldn't have come in a better year for them potentially.
Exactly. They're and not only that, but they're catching Ole Miss like right before it looks like Ole Miss is kind of figuring some things out. And they've
already played South Carolina back when South Carolina was being Muschamp.
Yeah, exactly. So when South Carolina was not doing well, and right before it looks like Ole Miss is figuring stuff out, they're able to get those games out of the way. And then Arkansas is just Arkansas. Who even knows what's going to happen by the time that one comes around? Brutal. But I mean, Missouri right now, it's still up in the air. How much does that suck?
Yeah, it sucks a lot, but it doesn't look like they're letting it affect how they play at all, which I think says a lot of the players and the leadership of the team, but also the coaching staff, because it could have been really easy for them to lose the room and it just go off the rails, especially when you open up against Wyoming and lose on the road.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the perfect segue for them to say, well, we might get a bowl ban. We've lost to Wyoming. We have a West Virginia team coming up that was really good last year, and it's the SEC. So like October and early November are going to be terrible. Yep. So perfect chance for them to kind of slip away, and the coaches and the leadership didn't let them. So,
what do you think though? It'll be for them because in all likelihood, this is the NCAA we're talking about. They're not exactly known for overturning decisions, right? That's not really their MO. So the chances are that at the end of the day, they're still going to have the postseason ban. They still would not be eligible to play like for an SEC championship, anything like that. Mm-hmm. What do you think that does for their psyche or for their motivation if that ruling comes in? Knowing that, hey, I mean, maybe they still give it their all, win out, have a great record, and say, hey, look, we had all this adversity. We had every chance to be able to quit, but we fought through it and gelled as a team. Or maybe they just say, okay, we did what we were supposed to do, but we screwed ourselves over early by getting in trouble, and this is what we're left with. What do you think it does for their psyche?
Yeah, I don't think they care.
At all. Yeah.
I mean, you hit it. Like, I think they knew that they were kind of going up against it with the NCAA. They don't like to look bad or look wrong. So the chances of them overturning this ruling is slim. But I don't think they care. Like, if they were going to let this get to them, they've had their chances to let it get to them, and they've found a way to win games, and they found ways to kind of stick together. If I'm a player for them, I'm all in on let's win the SEC East, even though we can't play for an SEC championship game. Let's have as good of a record as we possibly can, and just kind of carry that pride of like, we messed up, but we were going to fix it our way. Yep.
I mean, I could see that being very easily a galvanizing factor for the team to be able to say, hey, look, let's do everything so that we get to the end of the season and say, guess what? The only thing that stopped us was ourselves, Yeah,
exactly.
You guys got lucky this year, escaping just how good we actually, were. They still prove a point. It still goes down as, official record for the season on what they were able to do. Like, the results still stand. Ball don't lie,
Plus, and like they get a chance to play spoiler.
Absolutely, yes. Which is so much fun.
Oh, so much fun. Georgia is probably out of the college football playoff talk. But Georgia could go on a tear, and they've got a chance to upset Georgia and Florida in back-to-back weeks and potentially ruin any hopes either one of them had for any sort of meaningful postseason. And that's a lot of fun.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Missouri has, maybe not postseason hopes here and to play for. And let's be honest, I mean, bowl games don't mean anything anyway. It's like it's vacation for players.
Yeah,
but
it's just a little extra revenue for the NCAA and the schools. That's it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So I mean, unless they're able to play for an SEC title, or at least if they were able to earn that, but then couldn't because of the sanctions and all that, then that's one thing. But I mean, they still have everything to play for because they have pride to play for, and that goes a long way in these situations. To prove, hey, look, we're not going anywhere. The program is still strong. So I would think that no matter what happens, this is still a Missouri team that the other teams in the conference should be afraid of. They've climbed to the top 25.
Yep. And they're top of the table.
Yep.
In the East.
Winning in the East right now. Interesting schedule setup, though, that they've only played 2 conference games, while most of the other conference opponents have played 3 or 4. Several of them have played 4 conference games already.
Yeah, but they don't have any non-conference, no
nothing
late season tune-up games.
No.
It is
they did it all early.
It is straight business from now on.
That's like the old school traditional way of scheduling your team. Get all the non-conference at the beginning and then play the entire conference.
I'm all for it.
In a miserable.
It's
not even a homecoming game in there. Abilene Christian.
Yeah, no, because that's the thing. It's always so weird to have this brutal October and early November, and then you throw in a Georgia Southern,
right?
And then you finish up your year. It's just kind of well, I mean, I'm sure it's nice for the team because you kind of get to warm up a little bit and rest some players maybe and just
it's like
cruise. But then sometimes Georgia Southern beats you.
Yeah, it's like a halfway bye week. Is kind of what the goal. Get a late season quasi bye week. Play some bench guys until it goes wrong. Exactly. Until Georgia Southern beats you.
Until your offensive line starts blocking each other.
Yeah, exactly. My goodness, what a highlight that was. Yikes.
It'll never go away.
No, it won't. All right, let's talk about the biggest result of the weekend. That, of course, being South Carolina pulling off the upset against Georgia. Playing well, getting every break imaginable. I mean, the guy that never misses kicks.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, before we go, I did want to say one quick thing about Missouri. Another shout out to running back Larry Roundtree, who I just discovered, low key, changed his number from 33 to 34. Just kind of bumped it up. Fully expect him to become a 35. Next season.
He's just slowly leveling up after boss fights.
Yeah, that's all it is. Spending those XP points, man.
If he actually changes to 35 in only 2 weeks, he's my new favorite player of all time.
Hands down. So good. So good. So that South Carolina Georgia game, weird one. You have Rodrigo Blankenship, Mr. Automatic. You have South Carolina who's missing, field goals. You have South Carolina who's out here having to play a third string quarterback because their first string's out for the season, and then something happens to Ryan Helinski. So now they've got DeCarrion Joyner, who's having to step in, a freshman, and play QB for him.
Yeah, what a terrible game to step into.
I know. It can't be any worse than that. It just can't.
Yeah.
But on top of that, then, you've got, honestly, not a great offensive outing. Rico Dowdle, the running back, averages less than 4 yards a carry, 79 yards total. Joyner, when he comes in, only completes half of his 12 passes for 39 yards. Helinski before then was only able to get 5.8 yards per pass. So even though he completed 15 of 20, still only 116 yards. And honestly, most of that is only because in the first quarter, he got 46 yards on one touchdown pass. Yeah,
it's kind of like when like Auburn beat Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago. It was purely just circumstantial winning for them. Like they did not have a good offensive night and still found a way to win the game with like 200 yards and just terrible performances,
Sure. And a good defense. Auburn has a good defense, and South Carolina's defense play well. I mean, South Carolina got a pick six.
Right. Yeah.
Which
like Jake
huge.
Fromm looking like he's, starting for Florida this year with like 4 turnovers by himself. That's like he hadn't thrown a pick in what like they were talking about it, something like 150 attempts or something, and he throws 3 in one game and one's a pick six, or
exactly.
He's Mr. Automatic also, like in terms of taking care of the ball, and just has a horrible game.
Well, and let's talk about that a bit more, because something we've talked about on the show, especially going back to last season, is how Fromm is, the type of quarterback who is quite good in the situations that play to his strengths. But the moment that he has to be like the guy that dictates the game, then that's when things go poorly for him. Like he's not, he's kind of I think he's better than like when people use the field general line as like an insult to quarterbacks. Like he's better than that. He's much more talented than that. But he also is not, going to be a Drew Lock cannon for an arm type of guy. He's not going to be a Dak Prescott super efficient and then can, mow you down with his legs type of guy. Like he's a very good quarterback, but he plays best when he plays in the rhythm of the game. And this was one of those games in which Georgia messed up, and he had to try to dictate the rhythm of the game. And that's why you see him attempting 51 passes, Yeah. Granted that some of that's overtime numbers, but 51 passes, those 3 interceptions. I want to say he might have had a fumble as well. I'm trying to remember if that's true or not, but
yeah, he had a fumble and he lost it.
Yeah. So that's just one of those situations I think that becomes the game that plays against everything that Jake Fromm does well.
Yeah, I think Georgia is mostly built. I mean, you've seen this like the last couple of years with Kirby Smart. Like they are exceptionally good when they're playing with the lead, but when they lose it and they have to become maybe a more explosive team to come back, like they aren't quite as good. If you're getting Fromm to throw more than 35 passes a game, it seems like it almost kind of gets to him a little bit,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I like him. I like the kid, and he seems like he's a great like team captain. He seems like he's a great teammate. Anytime you see him talking with his teammates, he's very much like, he's very smart. He knows what to do. But it just he is not going to be Drew Brees, who like is like the game runs through him. He plays best when he's playing in the rhythm of the game, of the matchup. And that just was not the case. South Carolina was able to disrupt the rhythm, and that's what works so well. And, that's what every team I think tries to do against Georgia. South Carolina just happened to actually do it, which is so weird.
Yeah. Pick sixes help.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, yes. 53-yard pick sixes especially help.
Right.
long
daggers.
Pick sixes.
Yeah,
exactly. And then, of course, you get down to the fact that Rodrigo Blankenship, it suddenly actually misses kicks and stuff, which is just so unnatural for sure.
Georgia had lots of opportunities to actually win the game late and just couldn't capitalize on it.
Yeah, we can't overlook that fact. For everything South Carolina did well in dictating pace and dictating the rhythm of the game, Georgia had chances too. It just was, I don't know, uncharacteristic. But at the same time, this is the first real adversity. Well, maybe second. Notre Dame game was a close one, but this was the first real adversity that Georgia's had to face. I feel like the Notre Dame game, maybe Georgia, they certainly did not have to come from behind or anything.
Right. Yeah. They got the lead and started to kind of crumble late. So, maybe we saw the blueprints there,
Yeah. They were down 3 at half and then, scored, went from 7 points to 23 points by the time Notre Dame got a late touchdown to make it, closer again. So This is the first real adversity that we saw Georgia face, and, they didn't handle it well.
Yeah.
But this could also be reminiscent of, the greatest moment in Ole Miss athletic history when they beat Florida the year that Florida went on and won a national title,
It's true.
It could be.
Jake Fromm didn't cry from the podium.
Right. So it doesn't
make any
count.
Promises. So he's not a real leader.
Here's the questions then that involve the coaches here. And this is an observation. I'm going to mention this real quick. This is an observation I made because I was hanging out with friend of the program, Chad Gibbs, over the weekend. Chad, a big Auburn fan, has helped out with Auburn previews before and Auburn episodes on the show. But I was hanging out with him, and he mentioned, he's like, you know what? Somebody pointed out to me that late in the game, in regulation time, that is, Kirby Smart had a chance to get Rodrigo Blankenship to at least attempt a long field goal, but kept trying to run more plays to get a little bit more yardage, and then they false started or held or something, and it went negative. But he had a chance to at least attempt it, and for some reason didn't. And Chad said, I wonder if he didn't attempt it because Kirby Smart was still on the Alabama coaching staff back when the pick 6 happened.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry. I don't think he was not on the coaching staff because at that point in time, he had already left the coaching staff, but he was there. If I remember correctly, I think he was there to scout or something like that. But either way, I don't think he was still there.
For the kick 6?
I'll fact check this real quick. When did he
kick 6 happened 15? 14? It's longer ago than I think.
Man, you're so right. Holy crap.
Yeah, because
November 30th, 2013.
Yeah, I remember seeing it pop up on my Twitter feed just a few weeks ago, and me being like, "Oh wow, that happened that long ago."
Yeah, wow. Well, you know what? I think I'm getting it confused with the season that Auburn ended up beating, the Auburn season of 2 years ago, where they ended up beating Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah,
and then losing in the SEC championship game. But yeah, so anyway, Kirby Smart. Yep. Kirby Smart was on the coaching staff back then at the kick 6, and I wonder if that was kind of in the back of his mind a little bit.
Maybe the end of that game was so bizarre because both coaches kind of made really weird decisions. South Carolina had a chance to kind of break the tie in the fourth quarter and missed a pretty short field goal, and then had more chances to break the lead with field goals. And Will Muschamp was just like, nope, not trusting you again.
Right.
And was just running, plays on 4th and 2 from the Georgia 30. Yeah, like there were I think 3 separate fourth down plays that he refused to go for a field goal on. Or like even punt on from like the Georgia 49 or something, something to pin him deep. He was just going for it. He tried his best to Muschamp that game up.
Boy, did he ever. Now I'm just sitting here looking at the Kick Six Wikipedia page and
what a play.
Remembering that Ellis Johnson was the Auburn defensive coordinator at that point in time. So shout out to former Mississippi State defensive coordinator, South Carolina defensive coordinator, and Auburn defensive coordinator Ellis Johnson, who and former Alabama coordinator. Ellis Johnson has coached on the defense for
everyone.
Anyway,
coming soon to Florida.
Yeah, I mean he's Alabama, Mississippi State, South Carolina, and Auburn. That's 3 SEC teams in South Carolina right there.
Yep.
Good on you, Ellis. All right, 2 coaches that require a little bit of discussion now. One we're currently talking about, Will Muschamp. Does this victory here against Georgia, I mean, does this kind of validate Muschamp so far at South Carolina? And I ask this because this was a season where we talked about him maybe kind of being on the hot seat a little bit, but maybe also there being some, I don't know, just unfortunate circumstances around South Carolina. How sometimes they underperform, but also sometimes like their starting quarterback gets hurt and out for the season in like the first week. That sort of thing happens. Do you think this is enough like to keep Muschamp around for a little bit longer?
It probably shouldn't be, but it almost definitely is.
Right.
I think this combined with, like you said, like it's really tough when your starting quarterback goes out in game 1 for the year. And it's for the year. But like that being said, he, preseason he was talking about how this is the most talented group that he's ever had at South Carolina, even with Jake Bentley being out, like he was still very confident in the group and underperformed all the way to this game. But going, on the road to the number 3 team in the country and upsetting them in overtime, like that's your classic quote unquote signature win, program win. And it's something that, people probably think that he can build off on. I'm not sold just because he had a lot of those at Florida and, drove that bus right into a cliff.
Yeah.
So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you also because you're terrible.
Right. No hard feelings there, Coach Boom. I almost called him Coach Chomp. I almost tried to have a little play on Muschamp, called him Coach Chomp, and then I was like, that's dumb. I should probably just stick with his actual nickname.
It worked for 4 years of his life. It's
true. It's very true. The Gamecocks are 3-3 overall, 2-2 in the conference. They have a chance to, if we look realistically at the last 6 games of the season, probably a loss to Florida, but a win at Tennessee, win against Vanderbilt. Appalachian State is good, so let's just go ahead and say that's a loss to App State. They're going up against Texas A&M. I think at this point, like South Carolina is playing better than A&M. So depending on how things go,
yeah, but it's at College Station. That place is crazy.
Is it? Is it?
Maybe historically. I don't know. Okay.
It's big. It's real big.
Road games are always hard, man.
They just are. And
then you have had the distinct pleasure of playing another number 3 team.
Yes, exactly. And then there's, Clemson. So safe to say that's probably lost. But we're looking at 6-6, probably best case scenario. That includes a Texas A&M victory. And who knows, maybe Appalachian State ends up not being as good. I just don't see. I don't know. They seem like a pretty solid team.
Yeah,
So is a 6-6 year enough? That's the question here. When it comes to Coach Chomp, I'm going ahead and renaming him officially. His name's now Coach Chomp. Comes to him, is a 6-6 year enough?
At South Carolina, maybe. but like, context matters, and I'm looking at their record so far, and that opening weekend loss to UNC, which turns out North Carolina is not bad,
right?
And that was an early game. Like, opening weekend games against Power 5 schools are always weird.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And was that one of those dumb quasi-neutral site games as well?
I think wasn't it played in Raleigh?
Charlotte, yeah. Because North Carolina, I don't think would go to Raleigh. I don't think they would want to go play there.
Who knows? And then they smoked Charleston Southern.
Right.
But then they played, number 2 Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Got beat up by them. Lost to a good Missouri team, like a really good Missouri team. And then, they had that UK loss last week,
mm-hmm.
which was, kind of rough. Or no, they actually beat Kentucky because Kentucky is now terrible.
Right. Were terrible. Now they're good again. They beat Arkansas.
Yeah, sure.
Winning cures everything, man.
Yeah. Plan the average season parade now. And then they beat, Georgia. Like, it's weird. Like, they're beating who they're supposed to beat, except for Georgia, and they're losing to really good teams. So maybe they're just exactly who they're supposed to be this year,
Yeah, maybe so. But the question is, them being who they're supposed to be, like, is that enough for him to be, like, forgiven? Is that enough for him to stick around? This is year 4. He starts things off 6-7, gets to 9-4, but then it's 7-6, and we're looking at probably another 6-6. That's another bowl game, sure.
Yep.
So, I mean, another,
maybe a bowl loss.
Yeah, but it could be a bowl loss. But and so, like, if you make that, okay, you might have a winning season. You might not. You might be 7-6. You might be 6-7 by the end of it. And it's like, is that enough? Or what are the expectations at right now? I think the fact of the matter is that with Muschamp and this season, probably fans are willing to say, like the loss of the quarterback hurts enough. The loss of a handful of injuries in general, a handful of bad circumstances. It hurts enough to, like, warrant a little bit of leeway. But at the same time,
he can say that, like, he hung on to win in Athens with a third string true freshman quarterback.
Right, exactly. So I feel like that's, like, enough to forgive some of the anger, but I don't know, because I don't know what South Carolina fans might be expecting right now or be wanting out of the program.
Yeah. Well, not to be overlooked, South Carolina hasn't fired a football coach in like 30 years.
Right. Exactly.
So they're a very patient bunch.
They really are. I mean, to their credit, for better or worse. Yeah. You had some lean Spurrier years, and then you had some really good Spurrier years to kind of end things. You had 3 straight 11-win seasons towards the end of his career.
Yeah, and they had Lou Holtz forever.
We say forever, but Lou Holtz was only there for 6 years.
God, it seems like he was there for 20.
Right? It really seems like it. He was winless his first season. Oh, gosh.
Maybe it was because we were, like, in high school.
Early. I mean, he got there in 99. So
yeah. Yep. I was in high school. I was a freshman. I was young.
Was that your freshman year in high school?
Yep.
Wow. God, you're old.
Super. I should probably be doing something else other than podcasting right now.
Probably so. Like taking your back pill.
Yeah. I have lots of those. Probably soaking in a warm tub somewhere.
I said that as an old person joke, and then I remembered you actually have a lingering back injury from your playing days. Whoops! Now I seem like more of a jerk than normal.
No, it's fine. It's probably going to kill me one day.
Perfect. What a great conversation. Speaking of great conversations, let's talk about Joe Moorhead. The other coach that warrants a lot of discussion after this past weekend is the Mississippi State second-year coach, who, of course, suffered an incredibly demoralizing defeat against what has been a very bad Tennessee program, and what turned into a very bad football game, just kind of in general. A defensive slogfest, that's the term I'm going to use. That actually, I mean, when you look at it, was a very, very close game. Tennessee gets one late score to stretch things out, but it was, always a one possession game for most of the time that the game was going on. That being said, it still is a loss to a team that was, heavy underdogs, heavy-ish underdogs, but much more than that, it was an offense that was, much like the Auburn game before then and coming out of a bye week as well, it should have been ready to play, and it was not. Rough performances from both quarterbacks. Star running back Kylan Hill has a terrible game. It really only has 11 chances at doing anything anyway, because the offense can't get anywhere. Maybe the best defensive performance that the Bulldogs put together, but it was wasted by bad offense, which is odd. So Joe Moorhead now, fans are pissed. And as we all know, sports fans, especially SEC sports fans, are incredibly reasonable individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But the situation right here, like, how much flack do you, as like an impartial observer, feel like Joe Moorhead deserves after a real flat performance against Auburn, and then a real flat performance coming out of a bye week against a bad opponent? It's not a good look at all.
Yeah, I was texting Chandler after the game, and a couple other friends, like that. It's almost inexcusable to have the type of game that they had against Auburn, have a bye week, and then you have what you would think is a good opportunity to kind of get some reps, square things away.
You cannot ask for a better opponent coming out of a bye week.
Maybe Arkansas, but
maybe,
like one of the two worst SEC teams. One that, quite honestly hasn't. Yeah, like they had that one game against UT Chattanooga, and that's it. Like they've been worked over by everybody else, and
not great.
I think Colin Hill came out after the game and said that he lost somebody real close to him, like the day before the game or something.
Yeah, he had like a death in the family.
Yeah, and it like that's so hard. Like everybody deals with trauma and grief differently. Like some guys play incredible shortly after a loss, and I don't fault him at all. But it is weird that he only got 11 carries. Maybe
the offense as a whole just like didn't have many drives, they were so underwhelming and so stagnant that they just couldn't and wouldn't do anything. Like when they had chances, they didn't take them. When they needed to create something, they really just kind of didn't. It wasn't until the very end of the game that they even got a touchdown to pull within 3 points. And then by then the defense was
just exhausted and immediately gave it back up. Like, I think they have to just go with Garrett Schrader. Like something is still wrong with Tommy Stevens. I know that Joe Moorhead loves the guy, really
Mm-hmm.
wants it to work out, but you're 6 games, like you're halfway through your year.
Yeah.
And
you shouldn't be feeling things out anymore at this point.
Yeah, like I get it. It sucks. Like he had an injury and it derailed his season, but you've got to make these decisions as head coaches saying, you know, we've played you a couple of times since you've come back and you haven't looked right.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to go with Schrader.
Yeah.
And I would hope that this game spurs him to, you know, make that decision. I really do. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But it needs to. Like he's got to pick somebody, and it shouldn't be Stevens.
Yep. I'll say this, like, to in Moorhead's credit, okay? Mm-hmm. To his credit, and this is, a lot of people don't like when coaches do things like this. I don't understand why, other than the fact that sports fans are stupid people. But, he came out and he said, he just flat out said, like, it's like, yeah, there were a lot of people telling me that I suck as I was trying to walk off the field. And, they're right. I did suck in that game. And he is still – there's the whole dumb maybe he's, not cut out to be an SEC coach, because it just means more down here. Ignore the fact that Arkansas is terrible. Auburn is not that amazing. Right. A&M doesn't look good.
Like half the league is just super
Tennessee,
average.
South Carolina's average, anyway, but the general, like, there's a lot of fans that are just like, well, he's just not ready. Well, the fact of the matter is this is his first head coaching job in a big time, position. So yeah, there's a lot of a learning curve and it's frustrating to have to deal with, but at the end of the day, I mean, the issues that the team is dealing with are more because of the massive amount of changes that have happened over the last season and a half than anything else.
Yeah, I think that the deck was pretty obviously stacked against him from day one, and to his credit, I think he leaned into it as best as he could. Like he had the severe misfortune of coming behind, his state's most successful head coach.
Second most successful.
Right. Well,
Jackie Sherrill will always have
like
more
one
than
game. Yeah.
Jackie Sherrill will always have more than Mullen.
Yeah. But doing it in a much more truncated time. And Mullen took him to number one, had Dak Prescott, had Nick Fitzgerald, two like legitimately electrifying players.
Had Keaton Thompson, who apparently is the greatest quarterback of all time, and Moorhead just can't see that.
Just really a lack of character development. But no, like he had that misfortune, and he's coming in and a completely different style. So he's having to kind of wait until his players come in while trying to do as best as he can with what Mullen left him. And that's not easy to do.
No.
Going from a spread type offense to a more, pro set typical football offense. Mm-hmm. And he also has the misfortune of being a very openly honest person.
Yeah.
Instead of the typical like SEC bravado that's spit out by everybody else,
right?
Where they avoid and tell you to shut up and go away, that things are fine.
Nick Saban.
Yes.
Yeah. Stop asking.
Yeah. So stop asking.
Yeah, he's a totally different personality than most of those guys, especially for Mullen.
Yeah, right. Who is a very let's just say confident person.
That's a good way of putting it. Did you wink when you said it? Confident wink.
With both eyes. No, like so you go from, guys like Mullen and Saban to a guy that's like, yep, I I performed poorly. I sucked. Like, my daughter was crying on the field, and I had no idea how to console her because I did a bad job.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, the talk about him is that he is an incredibly confident person, but he's not like brash at all.
Right.
And part of that, like, part of the confidence expresses itself in his ability to say, I'm going to take ownership and not pass the blame onto the players, which of course just, pisses fans off more because fans are like, no, it's not as much fun when you're agreeing with us. We want to be able to yell at you and you say, oh no, it's all these other things. And we can be like, no, it's not. Because that's
and like he's also always going to be measured against Mullen because
of course.
Like, Mullen's doing very well at Florida and things aren't so rosy at State. So then you have people second guessing, like, was he the right guy? And maybe he is, just not at the right time. Like that's the thing that happens.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that he's a bad coach.
No.
But maybe he is the guy, and State just needs to stick with him, which, for what it's worth, I think that the school will. Fans are going to be very vocal about their displeasure with him, but I think that the school is going to be patient with him.
And I do need to, of course, point out that, when I say things about like fans being babies or whatever, I'm talking about a very specific social media demographic of fans who, go to social media in order to vent about everything concerning their team. It was a habit that I had years ago, and I hated every time I opened up Twitter. I hated the way that my page looked. I was like, this is not the type of person I want to be. So I try to get away from that. But that's, it's very specific demographic who like to post their anger online a lot. So I'm not talking about all Mississippi State fans are irrational morons. But there is a lot of irrational morons in the world of sports fandom all over the place. That's just how it goes.
Every team has those guys.
Every team. So that being said, you're absolutely right. And the reason I mentioned that so much of what has been plaguing Moorhead and the Mississippi State team so far has to do with how much has changed in the past year and a half. I totally understand frustration and anger over last season not being better.
Completely.
And that's the one that I feel like that was a new head coach interpreting the situation incorrectly. And I think he pretty much said that as well, So I totally understand that. I was very open on the podcast as saying that I thought last season was nothing short of a failure from a Mississippi State perspective. And this season, though, I mean, like, it's not the same. Like, I don't know what some people expected out of the team this year, but, a 7, maybe 8-win season was pretty much, I think, the best that things could go. And, things are not going well right now, and it would take a small miracle to get to 7 wins. But at the same time, this is kind of what the season was always going to be. And but so much frustration lingers from last season, so much frustration lingers from Dan Mullen leaving, that I think fans are slow to realize how much has changed and how huge an impact that has, and then therefore how much another change probably would not do anything but make the situation worse. And even a decent example of this is the Mississippi State basketball team. They let me pull it up real quick, but they hired Ben Howland in what year? That's what I'm trying to open up. They hired Ben Howland in 2015. Okay, so it was a very quick turnaround from Rick Ray to Howland. Rick Ray only made it 3 seasons. Howland opened up. But Howland for a few years didn't do anything better than Rick Ray did. You know, everyone just kind of wanted to think that Rick Ray was this terrible basketball coach, and Howland was like the answer to everything. Howland only won 14 games his first season, 16 the next season. He didn't crack the 20-win mark until, you know, his third season there, and then it took 4 years just to make it back to the NCAA tournament. Can you imagine if fans had rioted in Howland's second season because
it would have looked silly
because he wasn't winning 20 games? But that's kind of what happens in football.
Yep.
You know, there's just less leeway. It's weird.
But it also doesn't help that, you know, with like basketball and some of the other sports, like you've got a lot of games to make up room and make up for errors.
Yeah.
With football, you've got, and in college football, you've got 12 games. So like each loss is seemingly devastating.
Yep.
And like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I don't think that you are either. Like the last two have been bad.
Oh yeah, no, been embarrassing.
Yeah,
for the program.
Yeah, but like you said, I don't know if maybe this exactly was expected, but like, you don't lose like the SEC's all-time leading whatever, and Nick Fitzgerald, who I think broke tons of records for like.
No, that was it. He was the all-time leading whatever.
Yep, nailed it. Like, didn't he set records for rushing yards as a quarterback? And like,
he's the all-time quarterback rusher. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like a record-setting player, and then you lose, you know, 3 first-round draft picks.
Yep. And not just 3 first-round defensive draft picks, but 9 starters on the defense, either graduated or are suspended.
Yeah, and
well, I think 8 are graduated or suspended, and 1 sucks. And so it's basically 9.
Yeah, and I think that you can make the case that, like, you know, guys like Sweat and Simmons are maybe not generational talents, but like they're elite players.
Yeah,
you know, and like you really didn't fill those holes. You know, like
no,
Tommy Stevens might be a good quarterback, but he's not to your team what Nick Fitzgerald was.
No. And I you know, the thing about Stevens is that he came in because he had played for a few years under Moorhead to begin with. Mm-hmm. So he knew Moorhead's system. He has, even though he hasn't played as much, he has more experience in the system and everything.
Yeah.
And maybe we're also seeing a little bit of his injury derailing the season because of that, because he was very efficient before he got hurt.
Right.
And since then, it's been a completely different, you know, outcome. So that could be something as well. But I think it's about time that we have to move on from this topic. We've kind of run out of time on a potential topic that we were going to get to, so we'll talk about it next week. But at this point in the season is the time in which the Heisman conversation really starts up. And by that, I mean the Heisman conversation was decided in the summer, and we just have to live with hype being the most important factor that goes into any major decisions.
As per usual.
Yep. But it is interesting. Odds makers have 5 particular Heisman, big-time Heisman candidates right now as of October 15th. Tua Tagovailoa, Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Joe Burrow, which means 4 of the 5 are SEC players. It just means more.
Just means more.
Oh, man. All right, let's get to our predictions and wrap up this episode here. Predictions shouldn't take long since there's only 2 of us here, but we'll get Chandler, Rowe, and Gray's predictions as well and post them for your reading pleasure and for, just the overall keeping up with the scores and everything like that. Speaking of scores, this is hilarious to me, but as of last week, somehow, some way, everyone is now tied with 55 correct picks. Chandler, who was in the lead, had a rough week. I, who had slipped down, had a great week. Keith and Gray both got 6 correct predictions. And now, here we are, 55 correct picks for everyone. So let's jump into what it is that we normally pick. And Keith, as I stall a little bit more, I want you to find one random thing for us to predict. All right? That's going to be your random, or that's going to be your assignment here. Pick the random thing. The upcoming slate of games, it's all conference games, which is nice. We don't have any, non-conference games sneaking up in here at all. And several of them look like very, very interesting matchups. So it's a little bit hard to pick exactly which ones to start with. But we're going to go with the ones that we think are probably going to be ugly games. And I think that the best one to start with, therefore, is one we discussed a bit, Missouri and Vanderbilt. Battle of the black and gold teams in the SEC. Missouri, of course, is now 22nd in the country. Keith, you want to let us know, let the people at home know what the spread is in that game?
Which game is that, sorry?
Missouri and Vanderbilt.
Missouri is a very tight 21-point favorite.
Very nice. All right. Keith, you start things off here, I guess, between the two of us. Missouri Vandy, you picking the Tigers?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's going to be rough.
They're like 21-point favorites or whatever. I could honestly see them winning by 35. Okay, maybe not 35, but that's what we're going to go with. As well, I don't know. This one could be halfway interesting depending on whether or not, because we haven't necessarily given much credit to Tennessee. Tennessee might be taking a few steps in the right direction, might not. Kind of hard to tell. But Tennessee and Alabama play each other, and it looks like maybe there's not a spread set on this one. Is that right?
Tennessee, Bama? No.
Oh, there is. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Bama is a 34.5-point favorite. Tennessee coming off of a very convincing win against State.
almost 35-point favorites. Yeah. Wow. You going with Bama on this one?
Yeah, definitely Bama.
Yeah, and I don't know if they cover, but they're going to be close to covering, right?
Yeah, they'll cover it in the second half because Bama's not going to do anything the first half, as per the Tennessee and Bama tradition.
Yes, absolutely. The rest of these matchups, there's one more matchup that probably won't be entertaining to watch, and that's the one that SEC Nation will be broadcasting from, live from Starkville, Mississippi, LSU and MSU. What is the spread there, Keith?
Yeah, LSU is a 17.5-point favorite.
Man, all right. I'm assuming you're going to go Tigers here as well?
Tigers.
That's an interesting
I'm surprised spread. It's not more, honestly.
Yeah, it should be more. Mississippi State's defense put together a good performance against Tennessee, but that's mostly because they played their suspended players. Yeah. And it seems like Moorhead's playing suspended players in games that he thinks are winnable. I don't expect to see those guys playing this weekend. So LSU should have a field day.
Yeah, and Tennessee's offense is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, not great. So that helps, Helps the defensive confidence out when the offense just isn't very good.
Yeah.
All right. I think that should wrap up what should be ugly games. The rest of them could be at least halfway entertaining, but we'll start off with one that may or may not be, and that's Auburn and Arkansas in Fayetteville, Arkansas. What's the spread?
Auburn, 18.5-point favorites.
All right. You pick at Auburn in this one?
War Eagle Tigers.
Yeah, I got to go a Booburn as well. I don't know if I honestly don't know if they cover this. I feel like Arkansas's offense is okay enough to score a few points, and I just don't. It's not so much that I think Arkansas is really good. This is just one of those examples where Auburn's really not probably that great.
Yeah, Jatavius Whitlow may have like 300 yards rushing, though.
No, because he's out for a few weeks. Remember?
That's right. He had surgery.
Yeah, he had surgery. He
still might have 300 yards rush.
He might. Yeah, he might come out on crutches and rush for 300. Who knows? So
Run
that'll be the
Hugh Freeze special.
Yeah, that'll be the big thing to watch. I think he's going to come out in a dentist chair, Whitlow in a dentist chair, rolling down
in a motorized dentist chair.
I don't think it's fair for Whitlow to be in a hover round, but he's going for it. This will be a very interesting one to see what the Auburn running game looks like without him. So, all right. We also have Georgia and Kentucky, and I got to be honest, Keith, this is a spread I did not anticipate seeing.
No, especially given the performances that both these teams had last weekend.
Right.
But Georgia is a 24.5-point favorite between the hedges.
Wow. Who are you picking in this?
I mean, Georgia's going to win, but you bet Kentucky to take the points all day long.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just 100% with you. I think Georgia might be a little shell-shocked, so this could go one of two ways. This could be they're a little shell-shocked from last week, so maybe they don't play a very great game, and Kentucky has confidence coming off a win. Or this could be that Georgia completely bombs. This could be that Kentucky completely bombs and Georgia absolutely destroys them because they're extra motivated. So who knows? I don't like that spread, but I don't know. I could see maybe 21-point victory if Georgia comes out motivated.
Yeah.
I feel like this game could go a lot of different ways. So let's cut back over to the West. Texas A&M travels to Oxford to face Ole Miss.
Texas A&M is a 6.5-point favorite at Vaught-Hemingway.
Interesting scoreline. Interesting spread. They think, all right, because I mean, neither team necessarily looks that good. But anyway, Keith, your thoughts? It's a tough one.
It really is. Like I would not be surprised at any outcome. None.
Right.
Even if they stay tied at 10 apiece through 70 overtimes, I would not be surprised.
Final score 13-10.
Yep. That being said, I think I'm gonna go with Ole Miss, man.
Man, I was gonna try to shock you by disagreeing with you, but I can't now. I think this is Ole Miss as well.
Dang
I just don't think A&M is doing that well.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they're that good. And going on the road might hurt. Now, that being said, I mean, who knows? I don't know if this is I'm looking at it real quick. It's a night game, so, not an 11 a.m. game. The 11 a.m. games are what kills everyone, I think. Auburn, Arkansas being 11 a.m. this weekend, it's just that's going to be ugly. It's just going to be ugly.
Arkansas is going to win.
Speaking of 11 a.m., you heard it first. Arkansas. Speaking of 11 a.m., South Carolina and Florida. What's the spread?
God, everyone's still going to be hungover. Florida's a 6-point favorite.
All right. What do you think your Gators do, Keith?
I think they win. I think I've also just forgotten his name. The South Carolina quarterback.
Joyner is the freshman. Helinski is the man who would be starting.
Yeah. With Helinski not starting, that's a big ask for a true freshman quarterback, But Florida could be potentially missing both Zuniga and Bernard, two of the players that are most keen on making freshman quarterbacks miserable.
Right.
But still, I think that Florida has the talent to somehow find a way to win, which is what they've been doing this whole year. Just finding ways to win games.
Yep, can't disagree with you there. This has a Florida victory written all over it for me. All right, two things we always do. We pick Florida State. Florida State's playing Wake Forest this week. And wait, is this spread correct?
Yep. Also, like, us picking Florida State games every week is one of my favorite traditions.
Oh, it's just, it's nonsense. We don't enjoy doing it, but we're doing it anyway.
But yes, you were reading that correct. Wake Forest is a 2-point favorite.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone be a 2-point favorite.
Yeah.
At home, too.
Yeah.
God, I don't know what to make of this one.
Yeah.
Who you going to pick?
I think Florida State wins.
Yeah. Once again, I'm agreeing with you. We're not disagreeing at all. This entire prediction set here.
Boring.
So boring. All right. The last random prediction that I threw at you right when we started things, and I think you've come up with a good one here. We've got Vikings-Lions in the NFL.
Lions trying to bounce back after a tough loss to the refs.
And the Vikings trying to bounce back from a tough being the Vikings. Vikings trying to bounce back from a tough having Kirk Cousins as their quarterback.
Trying to bounce back from being denied by a CFL quarterback.
Yes. Anyway, Vikings-Lions. Oh, whatever. What's the spread?
The Vikings are a 1-point favorite right now in Ford Field.
All right.
So,
who you going with, Keith?
Give me the Lions.
All right, you're going with Detroit. Keith, I hate to say this, but I also picked Detroit. So,
man, our mind is one.
No disagreement at all. The hive mind here at ROTC has won out in this episode. No disagreement. But the Lions, I think the Lions are an okay team this year. I know no one who's listening wants to hear about the NFL on account of this is an SEC podcast and amateurism just means more or whatever. But I love the NFL. I think the Lions are an okay team. I think they've just gotten some bad breaks. So,
yep, classic Lions.
Classic Lions. All right, that'll wrap things up then on this episode. Just a little duet all night long here. Me and Keith Harkins coming to you live, NPR, late night. The ROTC Smooth Jazz Session. I'm your host. Anyway, gonna stop doing that. I want to close things out by saying how incredibly disappointing it was to watch as we recorded. Team Canada beat Team USA in men's soccer 2-0. Team USA is trash.
Gosh.
I'm your friend Joseph Craven. I know. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. I'm sad about soccer. I'm sad about everything these days.
Sad about sports. Sports are bad.
Liverpool's doing great. Anyway, tune in if you want to hear more about Liverpool doing great. Listen to You'll Never Talk Alone. All right, I'm Joseph Craven. I'm going to wrap things up now. This has been Running Out the Clock. Stay tuned. The season premiere of God Friended Me is next. I could not tell at first if that was going to be Wolfpack or the Law and Order theme song.
It's a good bet either way.
Either one. Either way. You're going to win either way.